My name is Marin and I'm a junior here at the University of Dallas. This summer I worked at a commercial real estate business and a property management brokerage company in Anchorage, Alaska. It is privately owned and operated, and the CFO and property manager and my supervisor was Mr. Robert Williams. So what Seven-C Investments does is it's a property management company. So it has several buildings and it has tenants in the buildings that it manages and it rents out space to. So what it does is it posts listings online and it leases out the spaces to its tenants. Also, it develops the building space to meet the needs of their tenants. As well as that, they buy older buildings and warehouses and they try to update them and renovate them so they can also lease them out or sell them. And as a brokerage firm, they help business owners find spaces to rent, or they help building owners find their tenants. So for my internship, I had day-to-day duties and then I had long-term projects. So some of my day-to-day duties included answering the phones, because I had many clients or many tenants calling in, as well as professionals who are maintenance guys who I needed to talk to all the time. I helped manage the tenants along with answering the phone calls. You know, if they had any questions, I was the one who they came to first, and if I couldn't answer the question, then I went on to my supervisor, Mr. Williams. As well as I created marketing flyers. With the marketing flyers, what I did was I would take a space that was for lease, and I would find all the basic information that a potential client needed to know, and I would compile it onto a whole flyer, and from that flyer I would distribute it to all of the real estate agents in the state, or in the city actually, and I would also distribute it to offices nearby and post it in our office as well as on the online website, the MLS listings. I also greeted clients and tenants as they came into the door. I did general filing such as billing, new leases, created files, all that type stuff. And then I also helped update the website, so if there's any new leases, any type of that stuff, I would post the photos onto the website and all the new information. And then I also shadowed Mr. Williams because he was the accountant as well, so I shadowed his accounting process a little bit. So those are the day-to-day duties, and then on top of that I had the long-term projects that I worked on over the whole summer, and it was a lot of time management and balance between the two. So my first big project was completely reorganizing the filing system. The previous person who had been there kind of messed it up, so I had to go in and completely fix it all and make sure that you could find all the information, because Mr. Williams had a 5-second rule. He had to be able to open the file up and find any certain piece of information he needed within 5 seconds. And so I had to make sure that I had all the information so well organized that he could do that. Besides doing the filing project, I cataloged and organized every single floor plan and site plan. Because they had so many buildings that they owned and they had sold before in the past, they had tons of site plans laying around, and they had no idea which site plan was which one or how to find them. And so I went through all 200 of them and cataloged them onto an Excel spreadsheet, as well as organized them into a crate that they could easily pull out the site plan whenever they needed it. I also organized the front desk area because they had just recently renovated their building space or their office space. So I had to go through and just make sure that you could actually work in this space. And then when I was talking about the marketing flyers earlier, if someone called in on one of those marketing flyers that they were interested in, I had to put together a marketing packet, and they were typically between 5 and 30 pages, depending on the size of the building and all of its details to it. So I would have to make those packets and go to the site and take photos of every single aspect of the building that they would be interested in. So I had to do that. And then lastly, for all the tenants that they had, which is around 40, I had to go into every single lease file and make an abstract of the file, because every single lease is a little bit different. It's all generally the same, but they have differences such as square footage, price, location, who the tenant actually is. So I had to make single-page abstracts of what was in the lease so that Mr. Williams could open up a file and find exactly what he needed on the lease on this first page of the abstract. With these day-to-day duties I had to do, as well as the projects that I had, the long-term projects, I really developed a lot of skills, mainly these ones, which especially my communication, because I had to work with the tenants, and they would call in and have a problem, and I would have to relay that information on to Mr. Williams, as well as a maintenance guy that would solve the problem, or just I really had to be able to communicate and make sure that everybody was on the same page, there weren't any problems, and it could all flow smoothly. Then I also had to be very flexible. I had to learn that it wasn't it was their job that I had to do. So, like with the marketing flyers thing, they would give me an hour's notice that they had to have a whole marketing flyer done. So I had to be able to drop everything I was doing and work on this project that was the most immediate project that needed to be done. Another thing I learned is attention to detail. I noticed that with my memos and those little things around the office that I wasn't seeing every little aspect of it, and Mr. Williams actually really taught me that I need to be more attentive to everything and be more thorough, because it makes everything run a lot more smoothly. I learned how to post MLS listings online. I also learned how to work with the website creator. I learned how to create the marketing flyers and how to edit certain photos to make them and take them the right way to make them look the best as possible. And I also learned a little bit about the billing process, because there's so many tenants that they had to bill, and then all the bills that were coming in for the building. An ethical dilemma that I really witnessed this summer, it was with an issue of hazardous waste, a default tenant in the EPA, and the issue really was of an unethical bankruptcy. So what the lease says is that the landlord has no right to enter the premise of the tenant once its space has been leased out. And the law of Alaska says that the landlord has no right to inquire or interfere with the business of the tenant as long as they're not doing anything illegal, but they didn't know. So the company had no probable cause to enter into the space until after they discovered that their tenant had filed for bankruptcy and fled the state. And this tenant left behind 318 barrels of filled with highway paint. And so somehow the EPA found out about these barrels, and they actually had to get a judge's warrant to go into the space, and they deemed those barrels to be hazardous waste. And the hazardous waste was no way caused by the property manager, but they were forced to pay the EPA for all the removal costs and any other damages that it caused the environment. And so this is an ethical issue because this tenant left all of their responsibilities onto the property manager. They filed for bankruptcy in full knowledge of what they had done and the environmental laws they had broken, and they just left it all behind for their property manager to take care of. And I witnessed how this company how they reacted to this instance. They tried to fight it. They went to court and they tried to do everything they could to figure out what could be done. They tried to contact the tenant, but it had to continue on with their day-to-day business. And so finally what they ended up doing, they took care of the problem and they paid for all the costs because they knew it could be an environmental hazard, and they didn't want that kind of hazardous waste in the environment, and they understood that, and so they took care of the problem and paid for the cost. So over this whole internship, I learned a lot about what I know how to do well, but I also found some things that I need to improve on a lot. And that's definitely what I was talking about earlier, the details. Mr. Williams would take me to a building and he would point out all the things that I missed that could be liability issues or could just cause future problems. And it was just responsible ownership of the building. He was being a responsible landlord by paying attention to all these details, which is something that I need to really focus on. Another thing I need to practice more on is my phone skills. It's definitely nerve-wracking to call professionals who know what they're doing, and you're just an intern and you don't know, you're just learning the whole process. So it definitely was a little nerve-wracking calling people sometimes. But once I got in the hang of it, I got my courage up and it was better. But I need to be able to do that on my own I just need to be able to have that skill down. Another one I had was being more independent. I found myself at the beginning of my internship always asking for, what's my next task? Like, what can I do? How can I help out? And they're doing their business, their job as well, so they can't always have someone asking what to do, what can I do. And I learned over my internship that I need to be more independent, and I started taking more action and doing things on my own, things that I knew were okay to do. But I started doing that on my own, and I realized I need to be able to do that on my own, be more independent at work. And then lastly, I learned about conflict management, because I did have tenants calling me and being upset and sometimes yelling at me, and they were just looking out for their own business and they were just worried people. But sometimes I just didn't know how to handle that, because it is a little scary when someone is yelling at you on the phone. But that's one thing I need to improve on, is just getting a tougher skin to those kind of situations, because it's not personal. So yeah, that was my internship over the summer. Thank you.